Hi guys, and thank you for joining today's podcast. So I'm very happy to have two very notorious guests today. So I will let them introduce themselves quickly. So we have John and we have James, and they will be spending some time with us today to discuss about how they discovered the Panzer Dragoon series and how they enjoyed the remake, and we'll probably extend the discussion a little bit further. So. Who wants to start, guys?
John wants to start.
All right. I'll start. So yeah, I'm John Linneman with Digital Foundry. So obviously, I've done a whole retro series on there as well. So if you couldn't tell, I'm very into a lot of classic games, including Panzer Dragoon, of course. And I've done part 1 of a video series on it, but never actually finished it. So it'd be good to discuss it again today.
I'm James Mielke. I used to be a gaming journalist for Electronic Gaming Monthly, GameSpot, OneUp.com, and have since moved into game development at Q Entertainment, Q Games, and now my own studio, Tigertron. And I got into Panzer Dragoon probably when everybody else did in the first wave of SEGA Saturn software, when we were desperate and hungry for content, and discovered this charming little game called Panzer Dragoon, and the rest is history.
So you guys discovered the series with the first game, right? If I remember correctly, you, John, as well.
I did.
Yeah, same. I mean, for me, it was, I remember seeing it back at Toys R Us, of all things. It was just after the Saturn launched. You walk in, they had it set up. They were sort of playing the CGI introduction when I walked by and stopped and played it, and I was pretty impressed with it at the time. And that was one of the first games I would eventually pick up on the Saturn when I picked one up. So,
and that was a way to discover it, by seeing that CG intro, and because very evocative, right? You wouldn't necessarily get high hopes for the game by looking at the box art, because the original box art for the US version really kind of sucked. It was, I mean, most box art sucked at that time, but like this one was just, render, guy on dragon, hammered into that weird Sega Saturn long box format. It wasn't really that attractive.
No, it really didn't work. I mean, you're right. The logo itself, the artwork, like the layout, it just looked very amateurish. And then, eventually, obviously, I would get the Japanese copy, and you look at the artwork there and its inspirations, and it's like, wow, this is stunning. And it's just, I can't understand why that was happening back then, like from the marketing perspective.
It's like you've got access to this hand-drawn art by Mobius. It looks beautiful. It's full color. And then you default to this, but the thing is, it's like, everybody thought like CG renders were cool back then. Right. It's like,
I mean, that is true. That's the thing to remember, I guess. I mean, this is all the post Donkey Kong Country, and everybody was all focused on, we got that 3D look with the CGI pre-renders, and that was the hotness. But in retrospect, I don't think it holds up that well.
Yeah, no, I had a writer who used to do a lot of stuff for one of the magazines I worked on, and I remember he put it very succinctly that publishers were much more enamored of crappy CG art than beautiful 2D art, and that was really true.
Yeah, that's a real shame. And thankfully, though, it doesn't actually translate over into the game itself, which is beautiful and untouched as well. So
that was, what was that, 1996?
Was that
the game, 95?
No, it was 1995. It was 95. Right? Yeah, and that was one of the few launch titles.
That's true.
And I think it was like earlier that spring in Japan, so it was like 2 or 3 months after launch. And yeah, that's a weird one though, because just as a quick tech thing, I've learned that they could have pushed the frame rate up, but because the game was designed so early before the Saturn hardware was complete, they had been sort of targeting 20 frames per second instead of 30, and they composed all the music tracks specifically around the gameplay, and they hadn't decoupled the logic and the rendering. So if they ran it faster, which is possible with like a cheat code kind of thing, it breaks the music basically. So as an early game for the system, it's not that smooth. It's completely playable, and I mean, I suppose it's a lot better than like Star Fox and other types of rail shooters that were popular at the time. So it's fine. But in retrospect, clearly they could have pushed it even further. But that's just kind of what it is to be an early game for a system, I guess.
Especially on the Saturn. I mean, like developers were constantly pulling tricks on that hardware, and every team had their own thing, right? So I can totally imagine how messing with the frame rate or something would have like broken it, I don't know if like exactly what the problems were with the music, but even just being out of sync with.
That's the main thing, is because the music was pre-composed. Like the composer designed it around the gameplay, and the game is fixed in terms of where it moves. It follows a set camera through the level, so it knows that when it gets to this point, he wanted the music to like swell right as you passed a certain area and such like that. But with the way they have it set up, if you run it in the fast mode where the frame rate is up to 30, the game speed is altered instead of just increasing the performance. And that was a problem a lot back then, where there was no math done to separate the two, so the game would just run faster. And that, was a problem. But not a big one, I'd say.
And that soundtrack was very meticulous. There'd be areas that you'd fly into, and then all of a sudden, like strings would come out, and then like
exactly
gorgeous soundtrack. But if the game ran faster, the soundtrack would almost be late in every instance. So that would have been terrible.
But you're right. I mean, the music in general was such a high point to this game, I think, and that was sort of the period when I was really starting to notice music in games more and more, popping. I got the Sega CD game. I can pop it into a CD player and listen to it. That was cool. But the epicness of the soundtrack in Panzer Dragoon, it was very unique sounding, kind of experimental. It's a bit orchestral, a bit electronic, kind of this weird mix, but it was really special at the time.
It's interesting because the composer was known for doing a lot of dance music at the time.
Yeah.
So to have him bring, he was a very uniquely qualified composer, because he brought some of the tracks actually showed that kind of like fast-paced electronic sound or origins, but then just the swell of the strings was so triumphant. It sounded like something that would fit well on like some kind of weird 90s anime hybrid about King Arthur or something like that. It had that kind of like, the trumpets and the combination of everything was just brilliant. It's a shame that he passed away.
I know, yeah.
I love the soundtracks of the subsequent games, but the first Panzer Dragoon soundtrack is to me it just feels really special.
It's truly unique.
Panzer Dragoon.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, that's one of the interesting things, especially that I learned later, was that for Panzer Dragoon 2 and I guess the RPG as well, they switched to sort of sample-based music on the audio chip, whereas the original game just used Red Book audio, just streamed off the disc. So, those sequels are very impressive in what they achieve using the Saturn sound processor to deliver the music as opposed to just plain Red Book. But you're right. Like, there's something about that original game that is just remarkable.
Was it to save on space that they changed the way they recorded music, or was?
Oh, I'm positive that's the case. I mean, Red Book audio, you think about it, it's the same format that you use for a music CD. It takes up a lot of space, right? You'd have like a 70-minute album. I can't remember what it was. It would fill a CD. So if you have Red Book audio, you're eating up a chunk of your disk space. Whereas the other method, which is used on like Super NES, PlayStation, Saturn a lot, where they define a sample set and the music's composed around there using like these virtual instruments. And you have a pretty small file size for the instrument samples that you're using, and you can sort of create the music from that. So it does save space, but obviously it's not like pre-recorded audio. It just gives it a very different sound. But
it also lets you be more reactive, because you can generate those sounds, so you don't have that syncing problem if you're just pulling the samples out as you need them.
you can do more loops and fun things with the sound and like adjust it based on what's happening and all kinds of stuff. Exactly. So that's really cool. That's a benefit of it, obviously.
So you mentioned that for you guys, the music of the first game is really special for you both. That's my understanding.
Oh yeah.
In terms of game overall, do you have a favorite episode in the series, apart from the music?
I mean, to be honest, I do love the whole game, but I don't think it's possible to top that first stage. Just the combination of the music with the water, like the imagery of all those ruins reflecting across the ocean. That was something really unique at the time and just absolutely beautiful. And it may seem quaint today when you look at it, but I still think like artistically, it's just really, it's still beautiful in its own way. And it's got a cool look to it that still holds up.
Yeah, all the elements really conspire to work well. And it's probably also because of the fact that first game was pretty challenging. So the first stage is the one that you saw the most. No matter how much you play the game, the first one is the one you saw the most, and that's where everything just really works, from the CG opening to learning the mechanics to being just a wash in that soundtrack as you're like kind of flying over the water through the ruins, as the ruins are collapsing, as the things are popping up. I mean, in my opinion, Panzer Dragoon, the original, has a lot more going for it than just the soundtrack. I mean, it's basically Space Harrier. But the riding on the back of a dragon, that the very evocative nature of like the world you're in, it felt like, the Japanese were very good at cribbing from their favorite influences. So you've got elements of Dune in there, you've got all these like disparate sci-fi elements, but they become their own thing in Panzer Dragoon. And, you're still fascinated. Everything was fascinating at that time about 3D, those are the days of like Super Mario 64, 3D cameras, just looking around in multiple directions, which you could not do in Space Harrier. So to have all those things just kind of combine in one beautiful souffle was just an epic moment in gaming. And we had like no forewarning about this game's existence. I remember when I got my Sega Saturn, I was playing Myst on the thing. God, what a tedious experience that was. You're playing Myst, and then what was it? There was some first-person shooter that I wrote.
Was it Robotica?
Yeah, yes. That I was like, that game made me so motion sickness, because every time you started, you were like on a gyroscope, and you would like pull back and then lurch forward and all this stuff. I got so sick playing it, I had to return it the next day. But then there was that, just just all the basic stuff. Virtua Fighter, first Virtua Fighter on Saturn. So to get such a complete package in Panzer Dragoon was a godsend. And it was, I don't think anything topped that first generation of Saturn software for me.
No, and that was a different time. I mean, obviously when the Saturn launched, there was the expectation that it would succeed in a big way around the world. And unfortunately, it did not. I mean, it did well enough in Japan. And I think in retrospect, more and more people have come around to the right side and realized that the Saturn is a great platform. But at the time, especially in the US, there was kind of this, I don't want to say people were against it per se, but there was very much a wave in favor of PlayStation. You could feel it just talking to people and the way the marketing played out.
Yeah, exactly. The marketing of PlayStation was totally destroying the Saturn. It was the same in Europe. I remember at school, I mean, everybody was talking about PlayStation, and they were almost making fun of the Saturn, because it was the cool thing to have. And it's maybe a short way to say it. There are a lot of other reasons, but PlayStation was cool at the time.
Well, let's not forget that Sega had really, really kind of burned all their goodwill is the nice way of saying it, like 32X, Sega CD, all these sort of mildly supported peripherals and platforms that had come out, and just the general, concept of familiarity breeds contempt. It's like people were just sort of tired of Sega maybe at that point. There's a little bit of Sega fatigue, and so Sony comes along with this unexpected console. It's relatively cheap. It's got those shiny new polygons, and the Saturn was doing polygons very poorly, and no transparencies, none of the bells and whistles that the PlayStation had. So it was a tough time to be a Saturn fan.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, eventually it would start. There's a number of games on Saturn that really couldn't be done well on PlayStation. I think Panzer Dragoon is actually one of them because it specifically uses the infinite plane system to do those large open environments without like warping. Whereas on PlayStation, you have to build everything out of polygons, and it would just it wouldn't work the way it does in Panzer Dragoon. So
yeah, no, they would have had to redo that. I asked Yukio Futatsugi if like at some point, I've interviewed that man too many times over the course of the last 15 years, but like I asked him if he could have just done it for PlayStation, if Sega had a third party strategy at that time. And he said they would not have been able to do it for a lot of reasons, and that it only exists it was probably designed around the Saturn and its unique architecture. So he didn't think that they could actually do it on PlayStation like that. I love the Saturn. I'm a Sega diehard fanboy. So
same here, yeah.
I love it, but at that time you didn't really see what the things that it was like really designed for. It was you'd have to go to Japan and get those beautiful 2D platformers like Keiō Yugekitai or something like that in order to see, wow, that's a gorgeous Saturn game. But Panzer Dragoon, there's no shame in its game.
No. And yeah, it's gosh, the Saturn. I just played through the original Grandia on the Saturn again recently, and just reminded of how there's so many things that they do technically in that version of the game that are just completely destroyed on PlayStation because of the way Game Arts used the hardware. It used it in so many specific ways to do really slick effects and tricks, often using the VDP1, VDP2 combination, and the PlayStation just doesn't support those features. So they have to come up with not so great solutions instead that didn't really translate well. And I think a lot of people never realized just how much better the Saturn version truly is. And it's a shame that it's not like out there in an accessible form for others to play today. So, but yeah, Panzer Dragoon, again, I mean, obviously it's that it's a second VDP with the way it handles. It's almost like a giant tile map that you can map as the ground, and you can rotate and move that around, and you just build your polygons on top of that, and it lets you do larger spaces than you could do using triangles at the time. And that was kind of the big secret that allowed them to really push the game in cool new directions. So,
yeah, and not wanting to jump ahead, but that's how they did a lot of the beautiful water effects and stuff in Spy, right?
Yes,
exactly. That beautiful indoor area leading up to the boss, a huge beautiful smooth water effect, and that huge cavern. So it's
all like 2D tricks on VDP2, and it's man, they look amazing. It still does. I think I love it.
You guys have sorry.
No, I was just going to say all the especially the Sega internal development teams that had kind of proprietary access to the engineers and everything. They were forced to innovate because of all these kind of shortcuts and hacks that they had to do with the hardware. John's always going to say this in a much more elegant way than I can, but but it was like what's the term, like basically you're just forced to innovate because of the unique attributes of the hardware, and so that's how they came up with a lot of these interesting creative decisions. And nobody would probably ever design in that way, but it's because of their restrictions that they were forced to kind of exploit what they could. So that's why you get a lot of these cool designs.
So we know the hardware was very, complex to develop for, and here we are in 2020. We still don't have, ports or remasters because it's difficult, because some source code have been lost. Do you guys have expectations, have hopes that someday a studio like maybe M2 could port some of these games?
So, I mean, we do have ports of the first game. I mean, there's a lot of ports actually. I mean, there's that original NVIDIA NV1 powered port for the PC. There's just a regular PC version. There's the PlayStation 2 version. And then there's the version that's unlockable in Panzer Dragoon Orta. And each one is kind of a unique iteration, and none of them are the same as the Saturn version. Even on PS2 and the Sega Ages collection, they say, oh, there's the retro mode. It's like Saturn, but it's not. It's still derived from the PC conversion, I think, in terms of some of the effects are missing or changed. But still, Panzer 1 is out there all over the place. It's the sequel, I think, that's kind of locked on Saturn. Right
I was talking more, in general, Saturn games, like you mentioned, Grand. Could we have some of these games like I don't know, Sega Rally, Virtua Fighter, or Fighter Megamix, some of these Saturn games? Could we someday have faithful ports?
Oh, that for sure.
It's still going to be hard though, because even something like Princess Crown, right? That eventually made its way over to the PlayStation Portable, but that one had to be completely reverse engineered from the Saturn version, because just video game archiving, archiving the data and everything back in those days was terrible. You constantly hear about it, like even Square Enix, with Final Fantasy VIII, right? The fact that there's a port now is a miracle, because they had to reverse engineer that entire game. So, most of the original development teams are disbanded. Half the publishers or more are long gone, or the developers or whoever had the source code for most of the Saturn games. I mean, and on top of the fact that the Saturn was so twisted in terms of all of its processors and how they were used, porting anything has got to be one of the hardest challenges. I know that there's a lot of fan projects out there and stuff, but I mean, we've never seen Burning Rangers. We've never seen most. Can you imagine a Burning Rangers that actually ran at a halfway?
I know. When I was talking to Christian Whitehead after Sonic Mania, he was saying remaking Burning Rangers would be a dream project for them, and I agree. I would love what they could do with that now. Whew, I've
never played it. I want to experience it.
It's a great game.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
It's so good.
It's held back. It's held back for sure by its technical limitations. I mean, you try and go back now and that frame rate is something else.
It's really low. Yeah.
But recently, I don't know if you've seen, but I did a huge retrospective of Phantasy Star Online for Polygon. And I was talking to the director, Miyoshi-san, about Phantasy Star Online, and he had originally worked on Burning Rangers. He told me about how they were originally designing that as a 4-player multiplayer online game. That was originally supposed to be their first attempt at that. And I can't even imagine. But with all the data that would have to go back and forth in those days, with characters that could jump around, and
I don't see
the camera was not great in that game to begin with. But I really want to go back and play that with that in mind, and kind of look at sort of the design decisions that they made. Imagine if you had 3 other players online and tackling these corridors and all that stuff with 3 other people. That would have just been an amazing game.
My gosh, yeah.
So I don't know if M2 wanted to do something like that. I think they'd have their work cut out for them, on almost any Saturn.
I think exactly. I mean, outside emulations come a long way, but actually coding a new version of a game based on a Saturn game, we pretty much got to reverse engineer it, I think, and that's kind of the only way to go about doing it.
I'm more surprised that there haven't been more Dreamcast remasters, because that was based on a Windows architecture. The games were at least that hardware was more sympathetically designed. It wasn't like a last minute decision. Oh, the competition's doing this. There are a couple more processors in the hardware. You know, it was a more elegant architecture from day
Oh
one.
yeah.
So why there aren't more? You know, why Capcom eventually put Power Stone on PSP, but why that hasn't been released as a remaster is beyond me.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's been a lot more Dreamcast ports to other systems, especially right after Sega went third party. I mean, you got your Crazy Taxis, Echo, Headhunter, the Sonic Adventure games. You've got Skies of Arcadia on GameCube, 18 Wheeler. There's a decent number of games that got ported, but there's still some games that are kind of locked to the Dreamcast, I think.
Yeah, but I mean, they were ported to things that
now need ports.
Now need ports. We need ports of the ports, right? Why is this Skies of Arcadia downloadable?
That's true. Yeah,
it's like Sega gave up. Sort of.
It's just as uncommon on GameCube as it is on Dreamcast. So it's like it almost doesn't matter. It's like we need a new version of that. Exactly.
I know from very well placed sources that current Sega management. You know, back in those days, you have to remember that it was CSK's chairman who owned Sega.
Oh yeah,
Ogawa-san. He was the one who was really gutsy and gung ho and would, like, you know, at a drop of a hat, drop like 500 million into Sega to keep them going and stuff like that, right? But once he passed, and once they became a subsidiary of Sammy and all the permutations that have happened since then, they are very risk averse, right? And they don't think about this. I mean, it's been like 12 years or something like that, or 14 years or something since like we've had a Virtua Fighter update, right? I've heard that Sega AM2 doesn't even really exist in the way they used to, so that's why there hasn't been a new Virtua Fighter. They've let major anniversaries in that series go by without even a whiff of like a celebration. They're just not into, and I've heard that they let multiple ideas just land on their table and then go away for like a Virtua Fighter retrospective or celebration. So they're the way that Sega is operating now is like, you know, you see them focus on stuff like the Yakuza series and certain franchises now, but in regards to retro classics, Jet Set Radio, all those things, I mean, we've never seen Gun Valkyrie. That's a funky game control wise, but we've never seen a Gun Valkyrie port or anything. Sega is mostly in a license out mode nowadays, which is why you see Panzer Dragoon being developed by an external developer. Why you see, you know, they'll license. They're like, you know, when I was working on Jupiter and Mars, I heard, you know, there was a suggestion that came down the pipe, like, would you guys be interested in licensing the Echo the Dolphin license? You know, because they thought like, well, this could be something that you could turn into an Echo game or whatever. Yeah. And I was like, I don't have money to spend on a license, you know, because to them that's safe. It's like a game gets out there, they get some licensing money. There's like a sort of a, you know, there's no risk involved for them to do that.
They can hurt the license. I mean, they can tarnish if they are not careful. They can tarnish the license, but.
I'm sure there's a certain amount of vetting, you know, that they do, but it's a very, I don't know. It
feel like they've struck gold a few times at this point with their licenses, at least with some really solid efforts. I mean, Streets of Rage 4 this year alone was a huge success, I think. But it does seem like Sega has this blind spot for the Saturn and Dreamcast era in a weird way. Like they're always happy to bring back Mega Drive stuff and their old 80s arcade stuff.
It's too much Mega Drive Genesis.
Exactly. It's either that or newer stuff. But everything during the mid to late 90s, early 2000s, they seem to be unwilling to touch it anymore for the most part.
And it's amazing because Square Enix will port Final Fantasy everything to anything that will run it. You know, like my personal internal joke now is like you see Doom running on like pregnancy tests, right?
Yeah.
But you know, you can't scare up a port of anything. Like I've wanted a port of the original Phantasy Star Online just anything. I'm so desperate for that. Like, it's like, why don't you put it on something? But they just don't.
How is that not on Switch? I mean, especially with the portable nature of it and having an online infrastructure. I mean, it's absolutely perfect. Like, it's just the perfect platform for it. And I mean, I know they have PSO2 out there, but still, it's like
it's not the same.
That original. It's not the same. It's not the same.
It's a different experience. I fully believe that both of those games could coexist and that they would not cannibalize each other.
Exactly. That's the thing, is they could work together. They're different enough where it wouldn't cannibalize the other one. But yeah. Oof. That's a shame.
I think we could talk about SEGA in general all day. There's no shortage.
Yeah, exactly. So
pretty much.
Let's go back to our topic. So what I wanted to discuss next with you was this Panzer Dragoon remake that we've had this year. And I know that since you guys are fans of the series, you probably play that game and you have an opinion about it. So I think it's important to hear what you guys have to say about it. So maybe we can start with that. Who starts?
I'll say that, like, in general, it's not just Panzer Dragoon, but in general, I tend to be wary, or I become a little bit skeptical when new
Oh,
working with a beloved franchise. You know, take the new Star Wars trilogy, for example, right? As much as I sort of dislike the original prequels that George Lucas did for Star Wars, I felt like at least they were his garbage vision as opposed to somebody else's garbage vision. And, so I have those feelings no matter who is working on, like when a new guitarist comes into one of your favorite bands, you're just kind of like, oh, that's not so-and-so, right? And you get kind of like, you have your biases. And so when it was announced that somebody had licensed Panzer Dragoon, I was like, a completely new team, a European team. All I can hope, sometimes it works out great. You get new guys in there, you get new blood, you get some just new energy, and they do something fantastic, right?
We've seen that with SEGA recently several times. So there's a good track record there for teams picking up the mantle and doing it right.
Please remind me what games you're talking about, because it's really early morning for me. So
just all there. Two of the best examples in the last few years would be Streets of Rage 4 and Sonic Mania, both SEGA properties. Western teams took over, and they delivered something that is good enough to stand right alongside the original games, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I feel like Sonic Mania felt really true to Sonic, because the dude was like such a Sonic fan. That was the basically the fan project that turned into an official thing, right? Yeah. So that was like a real labor of love, and it showed. It was like really innovative and probably one of the freshest Sonic things to come out in a long time. Streets of Rage was dormant for so long, and the last thing that came out was like a 16-bit game. So
and then, there was attempts with there was a Streets of Rage in development for Dreamcast, but it was super, super early. There was the Spike Out games from SEGA, which was kind of
the spirit of it.
It's the spirit of Streets of Rage, but not exactly. So you're right; it'd been a long time. So they
so 2D games are like becoming, and the guys that they put forward, that they put on it, like Way Forward and stuff. You know from their track record that this is totally in their wheelhouse. So you feel like automatically some confidence that they're going to deliver the goods. Because side-scrolling 2D brawlers. They do side-scrolling 2D brawlers, and very good ones, right? So, but with Panzer Dragoon, it's not like, when you hear that like Platinum Games is taking over something that's a 3D third-person action game, you're like, well, that's what they do. So
yeah, exactly.
This is exciting, right? They're working on Nier, awesome, right? I could rattle off 12 franchises that you could put Platinum on, and they would knock it out of the park. But it's not like there's any company or any team that specializes purely in rail shooters. And you're like, wow, those rail shooter guys doing this rail shooter remake, amazing, right? It's kind of like this team I never heard of before. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, the fact that the two games you cited, they are very good, but they are original work. While Panzer Dragoon is a remake, so there is a frame. It's a little bit, you need to stay in that frame. And then I'm not defending the game. You guys are free to I have my own critics of the game. I'm just saying, yes, these games are good, but they are original works, and they can have a new vision somehow. You know what I mean? So they are not tarnishing the existing license. If they produce a bad game, it's their fault. It's a new game. While here, it's a remake.
Well, so actually, a comparable situation to that would be the French studio Lizard Cube doing the Dragon's Trap remake for that series, and then there was also
and they were involved with Streets of Rage as well.
They did the art stuff. Yeah, they did the art side, and then the guys in Montreal did the actual programming and game design. And then they did the Wonder Boy Dragon's Trap remake, and then also another French studio did Monster Boy, which was a sort of like a proper sequel to that series. I mean, all of those games were so well done, and Dragon's Trap was an actual remake as well, like this, and it had its own unique vision visually, but it works. It was really well done. Whereas I look at this remake of Panzer Dragoon, and right from the first stage, you get the feeling that they didn't have the eye for the aesthetic. Like, it's from their color choices and like the way the scenery's built up. Like how in the original, you get this feeling of being out in this almost desolate ocean. You're approaching from nothing, and slowly more and more ruins start to fill in. Whereas in the remake, you just kind of start off and you're just like in this sun-soaked area. There's like structures and mountains everywhere. The whole atmosphere is completely different. And like getting that moment right is so important. And I think right off the bat, it's like, this doesn't quite feel right. You know what I mean?
I feel so. Oh, go ahead.
I just have one short comment about that. I get what you're saying, and many fans, I mean, several fans have expressed that. Some like the way it is, some don't like. They prefer the original. Actually, this place is not a sea or an ocean. It's a lake. Just too precise about that. So
okay. Well, see, that's the thing though, is it felt more like that almost doesn't matter in retrospect, because if they I guess if they intended it to be a lake, it didn't actually look that way in the original, right?
Yeah. It really felt like an ocean to me.
And it's more like
that. But we have maps. We have data about that. But
but it's more about the atmosphere, the feeling that it brings to the table. I think that matters more than what the design doc said. I think like what they achieved. Like when you're fighting the boss, there is nothing around you. It's just endless water in all directions. So that certainly feels ocean-like. You know what I mean? So
and they said it would be hard to make a game like that today in 2020 with a plain ocean. That's what they replied to that. I'm just saying what they
no said. I know I can understand some of those viewpoints. Actually, we were talking earlier like who remakes rail shooters, but I think back and they did a really good job with Star Fox 3D on 3DS, which was a really, really good remake of Star Fox 64, and that is effectively the exact same type of remake as this.
Yeah. I mean, I think you get away with a lot, like when you're really kind of, I don't know, that's when you bring it up Star Fox, that it feels like it's more closely matched because of the 3DS emulating,
I mean,
doing a remake of an N64
yeah,
game.
But they had access to like modern like shading techniques and a lot of like modern technologies and stuff. Like it wasn't like high end, but they remade all the assets and they used all these new techniques, and it was significantly more advanced visually, I'd say.
Well, that was the one that Q Games did of the original Nintendo game, right? So that like I don't know, those are like those are definitely the right guys. Exactly. You can't really that's, if anything, that's like an improvement, right? But but like with Panzer Dragoon, there's something like, Panzer Dragoon fans like John and me, like I think, a lot of the games that we referenced, like, the 16-bit games that were brought back, there's so much leeway with what you could do, and still remain faithful, still improve things to modern fidelity, playability, all those concessions, and really come out on top. With Panzer Dragoon, it's like the instant that was announced, like my first thought is like, you better not fuck this up, So because there's so many ways that it can go wrong. Like one of the reasons why the original Panzer Dragoon was so successful is because of its limitations, because it overachieved, because of the charm, and you felt like these were scrappy underdogs who were like, man, despite all the adversity they had developing for this system, they still came out with something that was absolutely memorable. So when Forever came in, it was like, wow, you're really, really, really taking a chance playing with my good memories. Now, my intention is not to trash the remake, because like I think they do a lot of good things, and there is clearly a lot of heart and there a lot of love going into the effort. However, my biggest problem with the thing in a general sense, I look at it kind of like the Ghostbusters reboot, right? The one with Melissa McCarthy and Kristen Wiig.
Yeah.
That was a really funny movie. I liked it a lot. I love a lot of things about it, but it felt like so beholden to the original work.
Yeah.
Like it did not feel like, oh, well, let's drop these ladies in and do their own thing. It was almost like a remix of the original Ghostbusters, but with new actors. This Panzer Dragoon feels like they felt like so obligated to instead of just redoing the opening cinema and reinventing it in their own style, which I would have had really no problem with, it felt like they were just putting new, not next gen, but kind of like slightly updated, but still kind of crappy cinematics, but like really polished. So instead of like the rough, blocky, pixelated charm, you've got chunky looking, almost claymation dudes with the same animation data, everything felt like too thin. I didn't feel like there was any progress made. It was just like, okay, you just gave it a new coat of paint, and that paint isn't beautiful, because instead of looking like a beautiful now gen thing, it looked like an updated.
It looked like a PS3 era game to me.
Yeah, it looked like it looked like first generation PS3 CG, which was kind of funky and weird. And the original Panzer Dragoon feels a little bit Spartan in its visuals, because it had such a limited palette to work with. But the new one, like the dragon feels anemic, like everything feels like overly textured. It feels like something like like when people first started doing CG cinemas, everything had that look. I don't know. It doesn't feel right.
I feel like they slathered it in normal maps, basically. Like there's so much like extra detail there that probably shouldn't be there, that feels a little bit out of place, I always thought. And
to me, that makes it hard to play, because everything is so sharp. There's, they could have done some things with depth of field. Everything feels so sharp and like overly textured, that it's really hard to see where things are coming from. And, in some parts of the game, there's a lot of stuff coming from a lot of places, and I can't track anything visually.
Yeah. But beyond that, I guess for me, like I'm happy that they've improved it in time, but this launched in a really bad technical state, which actually really detracted from the experience for me. I mean, they shipped it with an uncapped frame rate that was just so variable and all over the place. I know it was made in Unity, and that's fine. Unity's great, but it had the unpolished feel of a very poorly optimized Unity game, where just nothing runs correctly. Everything looks and feels a little off. And it made,
to me the cherry. Sorry about that, James. John. Sorry. To me, sorry. Do you hear me, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Just 1 second.
The camera.
What is going on? Yeah.
Appuyez sur la touche Start Stop pour lancer. That's what we see.
Yeah.
Well, not anymore.
Right.
There it is.
Okay, I'm still in focus. I have my white balance correct. Okay, good. Yeah, I was gonna say. I don't know what I was gonna say. Sorry, was interrupted.
Well, the looks of Panzer Dragoon, the new
yeah,
look.
to me, the cherry on the cake in a bad way was the fact that the remix music was not even included in the package at launch, which was the promise we had. So, I mean, yeah, the game was technically not very optimized, but at least I was expecting what they announced, the remix music, but it was shipped in a patch. So, yeah, it felt really rushed.
Yeah, that's really lame, actually. I think Alex, he's probably a mutual friend of ours, Alex and Neil. He was producer on the music for this. And I know it was quite stressful to get everything done in time, but I think Kobayashi did a pretty good job with the remix tracks. Like, I think it's cool to hear. I always enjoy like a new take. Like, that's one thing that's cool. I mean, it was added later, but I think it's really cool to hear like sort of a new take on something like this. Especially, I always felt that it never takes away from the original. It's just cool to have the option, and I think she did a really nice job sort of tackling it. It sounds a bit more in line with some of the later games, obviously. But yeah, that is a cool feature, I think.
Yeah, I love this new soundtrack. I know many fans prefer the original. I think, as you said, it's cool to have the option. I must respect what they did here. We've criticized the several aspects of this remake, but one thing I must respect is the work that has been put into be faithful to the original game in terms of enemies placement, etc. Music synchronization. It's not easy when you are remaking a game from scratch without the source code. I'm not working in gaming, but I can only imagine. But I guess doing all that from scratch must be quite. It takes some time.
Again, I think one of the problems is that they decided to do as faithful a remake as they could, when we have to acknowledge that the first Panzer Dragoon, for all the things we love about it, is not the best game. They obviously knew that, because they refined the camera logic in the second in Spy. They did a lot of things that they could have retrofit to the original. I don't think anybody was going to be mad if the development team decided to take to modernize the camera. You could have at least had an optimal. They could have worked on an optimal camera setting. They could have made it, free look, so that you could go back and forth easily, because later levels in the remake really demand that. But instead, you're still doing the shoulder button stuff, and that's, it's unnecessary. I don't think anybody would have said oh, I want the original fucked up controls.
I think they were afraid to modernize it somehow. I don't know.
Well, that's the problem. Afraid. That's the problem.
Yeah,
they were
afraid,
and they were thus, like I said, they were beholden to the original design. I don't think Yukio Futatsugi would have ever said oh, how could you do that? No, you've got to leave the original camera system in there if you're going to do this thing. I think everybody would have been pleased if they modernized it. I don't feel like they needed. Panzer Dragoon is what it is, and if I want to play the original, I'll go and play that. I would have been fine if they made more dynamic camera angles in the cinematics, things that were, they should have taken more liberties. Is the short version.
I think you're really onto the big problem here. Is that it's this weird space where they both didn't take enough risks, but they also made changes that are perhaps not to everyone's taste. And it's if you're going to be so slavishly faithful to an original, but then you really have to go all the way, and that's kind of the issue, is it doesn't look or feel quite right, even though it tries to stick super closely to that original. And I kind of feel like this may have worked out better if they had taken more liberties with certain things to sort of find their own vision, rather than just trying to imitate the original as best as they could.
And something that feels off for me is the basic kind of reticle navigation and the targeting in this thing, because when you're playing on the Saturn analog controller or the original Sega Saturn pad, because of that frame rate, you were sort of locked into navigating that space in a certain speed and feel. But with the uncapped frame rate and all that stuff, like I just felt like I was like, I cannot track. It felt so sensitive. Like even just that opening, kind of segment where you're targeting those like real long, kind of snaky looking target enemies. Just targeting those guys, and they're for the most part stationary. Like it just felt so difficult. And that never really got better throughout the game, at least in the early days. I should probably patch the game and update it, but it just felt too free. Whereas the sort of constraints of the original frame rate kind of made it more manageable for me.
Yeah, this is definitely a game that seems like the patches have improved it somewhat, but overall, I kind of feel like it was maybe released a little too early for its own good. You only get a chance to make a first impression once. And I think the combination of releasing on Switch, where they had serious performance issues at launch, and there's just a lot of polish issues. It was missing content at launch, like the music, the extra music. There's just so much evidence out there that suggests that they just got it out too early. And I'm not sure what was going on in the background that meant that they had to keep that date. I'm sure there was reasons there, but I do think that hurt the potential of this remake overall.
It's a shame too, because they were working towards a fixed platform. It wasn't like, okay, well, they had to worry about like 4 other versions. Those are coming in time. But since they were launching for Switch, I don't know, maybe like you said, maybe they saw that this was a window. Maybe there was something to do with like, the developers' fiscal year or something like that. But, because they were working on a fixed platform, I would have imagined that would have been a little bit easier, because it's not like they had other things on their plate as far as this release was concerned. So yeah, they should have held it back a little bit, just to iron out some of the things. But I guess they don't. When you're developing a game, you're close to it, and you don't see the same things that other people are going to see once the game is out.
Exactly.
So, well, at least I don't know if you guys have anything else to add on this remake on the game itself, but we're gonna have yeah.
Well, what I was gonna say is that where they did take liberties, there's that whole new stage, right? It's an entirely new stage, isn't it? Like at the very end, where like either it's an entirely new stage, or it does not look anything like what was in the original game.
Which one, the final boss?
It's got like all these blimps and shit going by, and you're like in a very Avatar-looking area.
The unlimited stage with the code, no?
No, like you're
talking about the 5th episode, right?
That's all new, right? Because that does not look like the boss isn't the same as anything. It's a completely new area.
I think that was in the original. It's just they changed so much visually. I believe it was a lot of stuff on the ground before where.
There is no new stage. There is no new stage. There is nothing. I mean, they must have changed it if it doesn't look familiar for you, but there's nothing new per se.
I thought this was like a completely new. It's because I'm trying to reconcile it with what was in the original. I played the original so many times.
The way they do it in the original is it's just like this. It looks like you're flying way above a forest, and they have a few like bits of trees and foliage popping up out of the ground, but it's mostly just flat. Whereas for the remake, they really fleshed it out, and they have like full valleys and like trees and forests everywhere. I think that's the difference. So I guess you're right.
Right.
It is actually a pretty different stage in that sense.
Because like when I played it, and I wasn't doing like a side-by-side comparison, I was just going based on memories. But now I'm looking at screens of like of episode 5 on the Saturn version, and it was just like a flat, like like forest or something like that.
Exactly.
And you've got like the sort of Star Destroyer looking ships come in. But in the remake, to me, it felt like a completely new level. I was like, I don't even recognize this. It's just because it looks so Avatar-ish, like I guess because they did have so much more to work with. They were like, okay, well, we can make a fully realized forest, and we can have, but the enemy patterns, I don't ever remember being that chaotic. I just did not know what to target, and I've had to play through this game over and over again. I was actually doing a lot of video capture on this game, so like I was playing through that stage because to me it felt like I was like, well, this feels like a completely new stage, but I could not get used to the patterns. That eventually over time with the original game, I was able to like shoot down everything, but in this one, they just come at you from every direction, and everything is so hyper detailed. There's no level of detail kind of. There's no sympathy for the player. There's no like depth of field. There's nothing that helps you see where the enemy shots are coming from. And I'm just getting nailed. It was a miracle to me that I could even finish that stage. But like I was just getting nailed from all directions. Enemies were coming by so fast that there was just no way that my targeting reticle could come up. And like that final stage was such a disaster to me. I didn't recognize it in any way. To what was in the
it's really interesting how they tried to redo it. For me though, I mean, I didn't like the way the dense forest looked because the way they did the shadow maps was very noisy, so you just see like flickering shadows everywhere as you fly through it, which actually kind of ruined what they were trying to do for me visually. I kind of prefer the look because on Saturn it feels like you're way above the forest, where here you're kind of flying through. It looks like a PS3 era platform game or something. I don't know.
Okay, I get what you mean.
Yeah.
So it was too limited by the original game. You think they should have taken more liberties in terms of creativity and.
Well, it's weird. I feel like I'm giving them. I feel like I'm being a hypocrite when like I almost didn't even recognize like episode 5 at all. So there they obviously did take liberties, but it still didn't work out.
I think that's the problem. That the liberties they did take don't feel right. There's something off. It's between the art direction, the way they do the user interface looks a little bit cheap. It doesn't feel quite right. The changes that they did make don't sit well with a lot of us. And then a lot of other elements try to be too close to the original. So I don't know. It's a weird thing. Like I feel like they could be onto something with it, but there was a lot more work to be done to get there. Yeah.
So it didn't work the way you guys wanted.
No.
I will admit it was not perfect for me, for my taste neither, but that's how it is. And we are getting our PS4 and Xbox version. They are not saying officially, but I remember in our interview that I translated a few weeks ago that they said it was coming on Xbox One and next gen, so Series X and Series S probably as well. I have a theory about that. I think they might be delaying the Xbox version because it's maybe coming on Game Pass. Maybe they have secured a deal because they probably don't know how many copies they would sell on that platform. So it's maybe better for them to negotiate a check and do it a bit later than on PlayStation 4 because on PlayStation 4 they will sell traditional copies. So they maybe don't want to cannibalize those potential sales, and that's my thought about that. I'm not sure what.
I mean, that's possible, but maybe it's also they're just a small studio and trying to produce multiple versions of one game is demanding, and they need to focus on one, then the other, then the next one, kind of thing. So, especially if they're going for all like. If they want to support the Xbox One, the Xbox One X, the Xbox Series S, and the Xbox Series X, I mean, they're all kind of derived from the same base, but they're not the same. So that's a lot of work. So I feel for them.
and you have PlayStation 4 and then maybe
Yeah,
5.
exactly.
I don't know if they will. I don't know if they will patch it for the PS5 or if it will just be a backward compatible version. We don't know yet, but it's probably definitely coming on all consoles. We will see in what state. Honestly, I'm not too. I have my expectations in check because I've played the Stadia version, and I don't think the game will look incredibly better than the Stadia version, because Stadia is already a powerful system compared to the Switch, and the Stadia version was not that much more impressive than the Switch version, to be honest.
I mean, I don't think there's much to change there. It's just they'll probably just increase the rendering resolution and smooth out the frame rate, and that's about it.
And the Steam version is coming out. There's no release date yet. Yeah.
Soon.
Soon.
So we don't know what that means, but it's probably by the end of the year. It's probably releasing this year, most likely. So we shall see. Are you guys going to play it? Are you guys going to play it on PC or another console? Or?
I mean, sure, I'll give it a shot.
Yeah, I'll give it a shot, but like my enthusiasm is muted. I mean, I'm looking at a video like trailer on Steam, and it's obvious. Again, like I do need to give them some credit. It's obvious that they put a lot of effort into this. They didn't half-ass it at all. I just think that their decisions, the creative decisions that they made on this were off by enough to make it to make us critical of the game. You know, it's still obviously something that the team loves. They must love the game as much, the original, as much as we do. But man,
oh yeah, for sure.
Just watching that like first airship battle, like the boss battle, it's so annoying to me because like the camera is so terrible, and you can't see half the shots coming. Like, I don't know, the shots come at you a lot faster in this game.
It shows to me a lack of experience when it comes to building arcade style action in this way. Like there's just like they like the original game, but I don't think they fully got the fundamentals of building a game like this, and made some errors along the way that kind of hurt the playability. So, I mean, it's not such an easy thing, I think, to master this type of game. And it's amazing how well the original turned out and still holds up, but also how much better it got, like just in terms of basic controls and camera and enemy placement. I mean, as the series went forward, it got better. And I kind of wish they would have applied some of what the original developers maybe had learned, like examine their later works more. I mean, just look at Panzer Dragoon Orta. There's so many things that are just better in the way that it plays. I feel like if they had paid, drawn from that a little more, maybe that could have helped. I don't know. I'd like to know their development process in this and how they went about figuring out what they were going to do to bring this back, because it's interesting for sure.
And not to jump ahead to Orta, but since you brought it up, like that is a game where the Xbox One version is so gorgeous, because like Microsoft, even though it wasn't Smilebit that did the remaster, I was lucky enough to be able to attend the Smilebit reunion. It was like a 15-year reunion. God. Like I had just done this huge Panzer Dragoon Saga retrospective on Polygon, and because I was familiar with the guys on the team, and it interviewed quite a few members of the team, I was going to Tokyo at that time, and they reached out to me and said, "Hey, we're having a reunion here." And at first I thought it was a Team Andromeda reunion, but it turned out to be the Orta team reunion. And we're gonna be playing the game. Do you want to come and join us? I was like, hell yes, I do. And
oh my God,
we went in. It was like a private theater in Tokyo, and so they were projecting the game on a huge screen. And I was like, I didn't realize it was being remade. I thought it was just literally, they were going to be playing the Xbox
original Xbox version.
Yeah, like on an Xbox 360 or something. But it was backwards compatible on Xbox One. But I didn't realize the whole thing had been improved. And I
Right.
was like, what happened? When did you guys do this? And they're like, we didn't do it. Microsoft did it. Like, they asked us for the assets, and then they went to town on it. And apparently when they first released it on Xbox One S, or the original Xbox One, the version that Microsoft had recreated, they knew that the then current Xbox wasn't even powerful enough to display what all this work that they had done. But when they came out with the One X, that basically showed all the beauty of like all the things they had done, all the texture cleanup, the upscaling, everything. Just, you know, the 4K just was so gorgeous, and to be able to see it on that kind of screen, that to me felt like, well, you know, that's different, because you're working with original assets and you're not remaking the game. You're just remastering everything, right? Forever had a different thing going with remaking the original Panzer Dragoon, so it's not an apples to apples situation, so I'm not going to knock them for that. But that was the kind of impact that I was hoping to see in a Panzer Dragoon remake. So I guess now what we have to worry about is their remake of Spy. You know,
it is really interesting just looking at Orta, especially in the 4K backwards compatible version. I mean, it's just in terms of like asset quality and everything, it does look better than the remake. I mean, it really, for a game designed for a system from like 2001, it's kind of absurd how much detail was in there, and just how good, even on original hardware, just how good it looks. It still holds up really well, and it runs flawlessly.
I'm really curious how they operate on those enhancements. I mean, because if you have a disc, it actually re-downloads the whole game with the disc is just a sort of key to re-download the whole game. So I don't know what Microsoft did. Did they recreate assets based on the original assets, or do they use the original assets and improve them live when the game is running? I'm not.
Any changes are done. I mean, their backwards compatible thing works as sort of a virtual machine package that they kind of load up with their emulator, and each game is its own unique package and instance, so they can make changes to it from there. I mean, you know, you can change assets in a game while still doing sort of like emulation if you want. Like that's definitely a thing. So that's, you know, you just change out that art, and as long as you have the resources to pull it off, it can work.
But this was a very bespoke experience. You know, not like obviously not all backwards compatible games get this treatment. They gave this
no. There's like a select few games that get like this amount of attention, right? Like there's different levels of work you can put into each package, and they clearly put extra time into this one, and it turned out amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how like much work Microsoft did, for example, but you know they did this similar thing with Final Fantasy 13, you know, from the Xbox 360 version, practically remade the entire thing for 4K on Xbox One. But with Orta, you know, first of all, you know, like they SEGA at least had all the assets for this game, so that was probably one of the key elements, is that they archived this one properly, you know, and like whatever compromises they had to make for the original Xbox, you know, they were basically able to unlock all the textures, everything, and resample them so that they were like, you know, into 4K.
Did they need the original code for Panzer Dragoon Orta enhancement? Do you know about that?
I'm not really sure what you're talking about.
Because in theory, they don't need the original code to.
No. You don't need the original source code to do what Microsoft's doing. That's the whole benefit of their method. You can swap assets in and out in the package, but you don't need the original code. That's why what they do is so excellent, I guess you could say, because you can achieve a lot without actually digging into the code.
You're just making me want to play Orta now.
Yeah, I wanted to have.
I know, me too.
There was this person who worked on this program, the backward compatibility program. I wanted to. I invited him, but he was busy. He could not join today. It would have been interesting to discuss this with him. But Panzer Dragoon Orta is incredible on Xbox One X. It plays great, and it's a blast to play this game in 2020. I agree.
So Svi.
Svi, yes. Your expectations, you are a little bit worried, I guess, based on what we discussed
remake
before. Yeah.
Svi is a hard one. Svi, for me personally, as much as I love the original Panzer Dragoon and as much as I love SEGA, right, for what they did, Svi is one of my top 10 most influential games, high impact games for me personally, because of the quantum leap that it offered over the original Panzer Dragoon, the amazing amounts of replayability, just the visual things that they were doing. You know, we're
so
25
good.
years on, and I'm still reeling from like how good that. You go back and play that game, and it's so fantastic. So I don't know what I don't even know how to say this in any way that like doesn't sound like I'm just saying leave it alone. But like, you know, I hope that the team takes the feedback to heart that the community has had about the Panzer Dragoon remake. And I don't know what they need to do to like make a successful leap to remaking Spy, but because to me Spy is a perfect game. I think as far as rail shooters goes, that I even like Spy better than Rez, and Rez is such a powerful game for me, you know, just because it was just so evocative what they did visually and gameplay wise. It was a complete package. It is one of the best games I've ever played. And if the remake equivalent turns out kind of on par with how the remake for Panzer Dragoon comes, I'm going to be a little disappointed for sure.
Yeah, same. I think it's a very difficult task ahead of them. And yeah, like you said, I really hope that they've taken this feedback, but not in the way that we're people aren't giving this feedback to be mean. We should say, like, I wish the best for these developers. They clearly poured a lot of time and effort into creating this original game, but clearly there's more to be done. And I think they have the potential to get there, but I don't think it's going to be easy. And this game in particular, because of how refined it is, there's just a lot of things you can't afford to mess up. And maybe this is the redemption arc for them. Maybe they're able to come out and turn this around and deliver. Like, you know, the second Spy was a massive improvement over the original game. Maybe this will happen again with their take on it. That is entirely possible. And I hope for the best that this happens.
I'll tell you what I like about the first game more than the second game. I like that, you know, it was your first introduction. It was kind of like Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back, I think, in terms of sort of distinctions. But like the cinematics of the first one were just so eye-opening because you never saw anything like that in video games, let alone just the whole concept was a really fresh thing. And I really like the soundtrack, that the opening soundtrack, the opening theme song, like, those things just bring a lot of memories that maybe younger gamers just don't have. You know, they probably don't care as much about this as people who were there for this original Saturn game. But what I like about Spy, what that did was the branching paths, the scenes. I remember that forest scene where you've got that boss that comes in like a orangutan.
Oh yeah. I love it.
And the particles all falling down. That was just a phenomenal encounter. You know, the camera was one fixed camera, and it was just dramatically better than the first game. And and then just the fact that you were riding on your dragon in the start made him so much more endearing to the player, because you're riding on this like weak, underpowered little dragon. And that moment in the game where you, regardless of which path you take, where you jump off the cliff and you first take flight and all the soundtrack drops out and it's just you and the sound of wind in your hair and in your ears, where the dragon has finally taken flight for the first time. That is just a phenomenal, epic moment in gaming history.
It's so good, especially because I love the way they tease. When he first gets to a cliff edge, he tries to leap off but can't quite fly yet. and then a moments later, you actually get that moment where he leaps from the cliffside over that massive, just wide open terrain, and it's such a powerful moment.
And then on top of that, because of the branching paths and the variety of ways that you can work your way through the game affects the way your dragon levels up.
Yeah,
right?
the dragon evolution system. Exactly.
So,
that's so cool.
That makes you want to replay the game so many times because you want to see how taking this path, but then this path, and in this way towards the end of the game, you want to see how your dragon evolves every time. It's a pleasant surprise. At least 8 times of going through the game, you come out with a slightly different variation, and that was so thrilling at the time.
And there's a real challenge to it too, and like pulling off these different paths and getting everything right. Like it actually takes like effort from the player. And that sort of pushes you to want to keep replaying and playing some more. Like the original game's like a roller coaster ride. You pretty much have one way to go, and you just have to get through it. But this game feels like it rewards more skilled play and understanding of the levels, and you feel like you're pulling it apart. And it's a true evolution of the rail shooter. Like it takes what was started with Space Harrier and pushes it to this insane new level. And I guess I was just like 10 years after Space Harrier. That's a nice trajectory there.
Yeah, and I mean, like the boss encounters and stuff were so evocative. The graphics felt like they had taken a significant step up in just the space of that one game, and like it was only like it was a very short development time. It wasn't like they came back 4 years later with this gorgeous thing. They came back with about a year later.
Yeah,
right?
it was just a year.
Fast.
It's absurd.
And they had obviously grown more comfortable with the Saturn hardware, and they started to figure it out. And they were doing that simultaneous development with SEGA at the time. So for people like John and myself, having been there and experiencing the quantum leap from Panzer Dragoon to Spy and the coolness of the name, that whole Germanic thing that they had going on.
Oh yeah.
Was like Panzer Dragoon just in general was the coolest name, but then calling it Spy as opposed to just 2, that was just a small touch that meant so much, and the pleasure that we obviously received, like going from that first original wonderful game to the sequel, that is just like, now we're walking into like, don't fuck with my memories territory, and like, how are you going to do this? How are they going to? I don't even know what to expect. I cannot give you a list right now.
I know
of
exactly.
Like, this is the stuff you got to do in order to like meet my weird expectations for this game, because I know that we're a niche of a niche, right? People who are there. So that's a weird thing to have to satisfy. And like, I don't know. Do I want them to take more liberties? Do I want them to reinvent? Maybe that's the best way, because if they just try to do exactly what they did in Panzer Dragoon Spy, the way Futatsugi-san and Team Andromeda did it, are they going to be able to pull that off? I don't know. I personally
exactly.
I think like they should calm it down with the normal map style, right? And I think they should go for like a more, I don't know, maybe like, this is a weird thing, but like maybe if it looked more like Ring Fit Adventure, where everything was smoother and beautiful and more languid, maybe that would be a better approach than just this heavily like textured and like bumpy shadow looking stuff. Like I don't know. It's I felt like Panzer Dragoon Spy totally overachieved on the Saturn hardware, and when Panzer Dragoon Orta first came out, I remember reviewing it. And one of the things I said was that, the original Panzer Dragoons were always these overachievers on the most limited hardware or the most difficult hardware. And, even though the results came out kind of rough, you could still see just how gorgeous they were despite its roughness. With Panzer Dragoon Orta, they went from having their games on the most kind of like underpowered 3D hardware to the most powerful 3D hardware, the Xbox compared to the Dreamcast, compared to the PS2. And suddenly you had the most beautiful game. And I remember, even then I was like, this isn't Team Andromeda, it's Smilebit. It's somebody taking over from the original team and doing their own spin. And in hindsight, I really love Orta. It was a throwback to the difficulty of the original Panzer Dragoon, but I just thought it was gorgeous, and there was just, there's a lot of game in that game. That is a big game. but they still captured the feel of it. I felt
did.
like the dragon was a little anemic, especially after the big chunky dragons of Saga. So I felt like the single dragon was a little bit anemic in Orda. So I had my issues with it, but maybe that's something that the Panzer or the new Panzer team can achieve, like a new look, because I don't know, like I'm trying to imagine Spy is just smoother, and that doesn't work for me. And like I'm trying to imagine it with the normal mapping style of the first remake, and that doesn't work for me either. So I don't know what I think they definitely took a tough assignment.
Yeah, I kind of feel like I wouldn't mind seeing them build in sort of a pseudo retro style, like make it high res, but like sort of expand upon the concepts of the original visuals. Like keep your polygon counts low and simple, but go for really bold, sort of like, that sharp textures. Get rid of the flaws, like no more texture warping, none of the other like issues from back then, but then push it out. It's like, we mentioned Sonic Mania earlier. It took it's still 2D, it's still a sprite-based game, but they pushed it out much further than the original hardware ever could have gone, and like really went beyond. And I think like trying to go from the aesthetic of the original and just build upon it, improve it in ways that new technology allows, could be really interesting aesthetically, and it could still capture that. Or, I mean, if they want to continue down this road, I think they really need to look more at Orda instead of what they did with the remake, because like Orda does not go heavy on things like normal maps and all those other, and that's the period when they were starting to become big as well, and they kind of avoided all of that. They still has that somewhat flat, almost matte look to it. Like you do have your shiny surfaces, you have your reflective water and stuff like that, but overall everything sort of has this like very dull look. That's good. Like it's like the surfaces, like rocks are dusty and everything it feels like kind of a worn, lived in world somehow. And you really even got that feeling on Saturn, whereas that was what was kind of lost in their new game. So
you know what I feel like teams, what one of the things that they, to your point about how like they should expand on some of the things that like, where probably if hardware was different at that time and they had more tools to work with, kind of exploit the things that they couldn't on Saturn. Like there's the water better just be gorgeous. They better not, you can do the best water in the world now. So that's something that, they had to make sure they had to take shortcuts and use all kinds of hardware tricks, 2D, 2D bitmap tricks in order to achieve like, weird pseudo transparency, stuff like that. Make those things come to life now, things that the Saturn couldn't do, like light sourcing and stuff like that. You have so much opportunity to make this game absolutely gorgeous because of like light sourcing. Just that simple addition, like that low-hanging fruit, can make this so evocative. You don't have to go overly detailed. Just make what you've got, lush, and just make it, I just maybe less is more,
Hopefully they can be as bold as the original team. If you look back on the original disc art for Panzer Dragoon Zwei, the Japanese version, it has the text, Panzer Dragoon Zwei is one of the best 3D shooting games available, presented for your pleasure. Printing that right on the discs, that shows a lot of confidence.
And it's for my pleasure. Yeah. That's what I want.
Exactly.
I want it to be for my pleasure.
Presented for your pleasure.
Yeah.
So
a lot of pressure. A lot of pressure on this remake, and we have not seen anything yet. So
no. Well, hopefully they're taking their time.
I'm sure it'll be a while too. Yeah. Because of the feedback, they probably are going to be a little gun shy. They're probably not going to want to reveal too much before they're absolutely certain that this is, this is going to resonate well. I don't know how involved Futatsuki-san was with the remake of the first game, but if he wasn't, they should definitely start getting some feedback off of him, because that can't hurt.
They said he was somehow. They said he was contacted. I don't know the details or how much work, how much feedback he provided, but he was contacted. Apparently, they questioned him about the challenges they had, especially enemy placement, because because of the way modern technology works, it's harder to hide certain things, such as when the enemies pop. So he was contacted about that. I can't remember exactly what he answered about that, but it was in one of my interviews. So it's on the channel, I think. But yeah.
I think they have to be very careful about the enemy patterns, the speed at which the reticle moves. Like, again, they're not held back by frame rate and stuff like that. Enemies need to be visible. Like, I can't be going back and forth to the radar to try and track things. You need to be able to track them, organically and just looking around. Hopefully, because Panzer Dragoon Spy actually had that improved camera system and you didn't have to jump between different perspectives. Like with the remake, I was forever constantly jumping back between the different perspectives to try and find one that like offered me the most visibility. And maybe it was a problem that I was like playing most of the time on handheld mode rather than, on my TV. But because Spy already has the built-in camera improvements, maybe that will solve a lot of the issues because you won't be jumping around in different perspectives trying to get the most visibility going. I don't know. Hopefully there's something that's just going to click with the team and they'll be able to have a better result with this game.
For sure.
Okay, the next topic I wanted to discuss with you is the VR game that was announced. I think, John, you were aware of that, and James, you just discovered that recently.
Well, knowing that it's the same guy who did Gunner of Dragoon, I at our Japanese indie event BitSummit, I remember that developer came in with basically a mechanical bull, or equivalent. It was something. I think it must have been a homemade thing or something, but it was basically something you sat down on, a chair that he built, and you would put the headset on. I think it was probably an Oculus at the time, and then you'd go around and shoot in VR. And it was very, very, very rudimentary at the time. It was just kind of like flying. There wasn't a lot of motion because I think he was trying to avoid motion sickness. But it worked really well. I mean, you can easily see how this game would work in VR, and it worked very well.
Beyond that, I mean, obviously the Res stuff, Res and VR, and the additional content that was made for that as well. Like, that is unbelievable, that experience of playing in VR. And I think, clearly that demonstrates how well it would work for Panzer as well.
Yeah.
And it'd be weird though. I guess the difference there is in Panzer, you're like riding a dragon.
Yeah.
So I assume it would be like a first person, you're sitting on the dragon kind of feeling rather than like, the third person camera, which wouldn't make as much sense, I guess. I don't know. That'll be curious.
I all I remember is that it was very, very good. I'm looking up Gunner of Dragoon just to see if anything's online about that. But it looked really beautiful. It really felt like you were flying high above the ground, which was like a key element. And just like the sense of flying through the sky was really gorgeous. So this is cool because it's not remaking something. It's offering like, that Panzer Dragoon experience in a way that makes total sense. This guy is such a huge fan of Futatsuki. I've seen them talking at length at the gaming event, but I'm sure they talk offline quite a bit as well. So I have actually like a lot of high hopes, even if it's just something as simple as like a 5-stage arcade shooter in VR like this. I think it's going to be super, super cool. My confidence comes not from the concept matching up with the game world, but because of the fact that I actually played Gunner of Dragoon, and as simple as that version was, it felt right.
That's the impression I'm getting. There's some sort of footage here you can see of it, and this looks like this could be really interesting. And obviously, it's something you got to experience yourself, I guess. But
I can tell from our conversation that you guys would like Gunner of Dragoon if you had played that. And guessing that the official Panzer Dragoon VR experience is just going to be better because he's now allowed to go hog wild on his favorite thing.
Yeah, because that seems like just a tech demo, basically, a proof of concept. And now if he has real budget, I could see some amazing things being achieved. So
he's
and maybe
going
they'll include
to
like a mechanical bull controller with it. No, you ride on something.
He's going to do a crowdfunding campaign. I don't know if you heard about that.
Oh, a what?
He's going to crowdfund the game.
What, crowdfunding?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
I don't know if it's for the whole game. It's not very clear, or if it's for additional sequences. I'm not sure.
I hope it succeeds because people should know that like this, it's gonna be worth their time. But I mean, it's hard, right? Because the VR market is such a niche.
It's in a weird spot.
That's something I wanted to temper my expectation about that, because Panzer Dragoon has always been a little bit niche as a series, and my hopes for the series was for it to become a little bit more accessible, especially with the remake. And now I'm a little bit afraid that the VR game is going to be
a niche franchise for a niche format.
Yeah, exactly. That's my concern. But I mean, I hope it does well. And I don't have a VR headset yet.
If there's any justice, his crowdfunding campaign will succeed because that game felt good and it felt like an original. It felt like here's a worthwhile addition to the canon. And I wanted to mention that Panzer Dragoon games are. The original trilogy was so good that it's really hard to get that game right. I mean, look at Crimson Dragon, right?
Oh yeah.
The developer Futatsugi-san's own spiritual sequel to Panzer Dragoon. Now, having spoken with him, I understand that there are a lot of things that kind of got in the way of Microsoft's kind of interference in that game. Was the
original game and the final release was different, I think, from the original game. That's my understanding.
Because it was originally supposed to be a Kinect game, and then like Microsoft internally gave up on Kinect, so they were like, make it normal, like make it controller game and stuff like that, which it wasn't originally designed for. So they had to recalibrate all that stuff. So it's just a lot of development hell, right? But even
the vision was slightly modified apparently, because the original game is accessible, I think, via the homebrew community. I don't know exactly how it got released, and apparently there are some comparison between the original game, the original vision, and the final game. It's quite different. Something I didn't like about Crimson Dragon was this sort of American soldier shouting at the beginning of the game. It didn't feel like a spiritual successor to Panzer Dragoon to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it was its own thing, and it really is a shame that because there's some really cool stuff in there, but you can feel that it's a game that went through some difficult changes during development, and it maybe isn't what it could have been, but still.
I wish it was still purchasable and downloadable to your Xbox 360, but it doesn't look like it is.
You can play it on Xbox One.
I know, but but not if you haven't bought it, right?
Is it delisted?
I think so, because all I'm seeing is the trailer on the.
You can still buy it.
Wow. Okay.
I'm not sure if I bought it or if it's not in the Game Pass. I think, is it?
No.
Well, I'll have to look into that later, but yeah. So Spy, I'm hoping that they nail it, but again, they're wading into precious waters. You take any beloved franchise. It's like taking, like hearing a Romanian team is remaking Nights into Dreams, and you're kind of like, what, And I have no problems with the developer. I mean, like Polish developers are some of the best developers in the world for sure.
Look at The Witcher 3.
You want to go the opposite direction. Have you guys played Carrion?
No. What's this?
Oh my God. You play like basically this amorphous tendril-based monster. It's kind of like reverse like of Aliens, where you're the alien and you're trying to bust out of this base. The only thing that holds this game back is the fact that I just get so fucking stuck in the game because I just don't know where to go and what to do. And I have done everything I can, use every ability I have, and I'm just stuck. Most people complain that there's no map, but I'm like, well, when do blob-like tentacle aliens ever get a map? So I feel like that's a contrivance, but like I just can't figure out how to progress in the game. And I'm probably very close to the end, according to some wikis that I've read. But you should check out Carrion. Like, it's worth buying just for the first 80% of that game that you'll be able to play. I've never seen anything like it, and it controls like a dream. Controls like a dream. But like that's also from a very, very talented developer in Poland. And
they've been on an upswing for sure. Polish game developers. There's a lot of great stuff coming out of there for sure. And I'm gonna check out Carrion.
It's a hotbed of development.
It is, absolutely.
Seriously, I mean, there's entire regions and countries and continents that don't have developers of note, but Poland is like a hotspot for great development. And from a technical perspective, I don't really doubt. I don't have any concerns about like, oh, is it going to run well or anything like that. I think there's a lot of things when they were releasing Remake that they were probably having to deal with, probably working on multiple versions and then drilling down on the Switch version at the last minute or something. But I don't have any doubt or lack of confidence in their technical abilities. That's not the problem with Panzer Dragoon Remake. It's all about the feel, and just there's so many intangibles that are hard to get right, that were probably born out of just the challenges that Team Andromeda originally faced. They're not facing those same pressures. They're facing different kind of pressures, but they've got game engines, they've got original source code or emulating original source code. In fact, that might be the thing that frees them up for Panzer Dragoon Spy, is that I don't think they're really going to remake this, right? They don't have the original source code for any version of Panzer Dragoon Spy, right? There was never a PC version. So they're not working off of that.
Basis for that, exactly.
Not that I'm aware of.
So maybe this is what
the same process.
So maybe this liberates them because they have to do their best approximation of this, and maybe they run with it a little bit more because they're not strapped to the old PC code that they're trying to repurpose into a modern game.
Yeah, we'll have to see about that. This could be it. Yeah, I really hope they pull it off. I wish them the best. Both projects, actually, the VR game and this remake of Zwei.
Yeah, so that was, I don't know if you have anything to add, guys, about the VR game or the Zwei remake, but this discussion was about the confirmed project, the officially announced games. What about Saga? We need to talk about Saga now. There is nothing officially announced. So do you want something? Do you expect something?
I mean, what I want is a remake of, or a remaster or recreation of Panzer Dragoon Saga. And I hate saying this because who knows, maybe Forever's got that one tied up and they fully intend to do it or something. But I really feel like the only person who should be touching that one is Futatsugi.
Yeah.
That SEGA should, or that Futatsugi should license the rights to that with his current studio Grounding and remake that themselves. I mean, it's not the longest game. I don't think remaking that game, because I know he's got a lot of ideas about how he would do a new Panzer Dragoon. He, in multiple interviews I've done with him, he says he's got ideas for a new Panzer Dragoon game that, it's kind of like Yu Suzuki and Shenmue. He's got a vision, and there's a final chapter, right? That would be great for him to do something beyond Panzer Dragoon Saga, and I'm pretty sure it's just he wants to make a return to the shooting format, to the rail shooter format. But if anybody's going to do Saga, it should be him. There are so many considerations with that game, so many people involved with making that happen. You just can't emulate that one.
So just about that, you said you've talked to him a few times in the past. I don't know if you've spoken to him recently, but we've had this interview for the community. I contacted him, and he said that he actually doesn't want to do a remake of Saga, and he wants the younger generation to do that, but he said he wants to do a new Panzer Dragoon game in open world. You've probably
right. Open world. I'm sorry, yeah, but he wants it to be a shooter though, like you're.
Oh boy.
Not sure exactly how we would like to do that. If you ask me, I would like something more with RPG elements. But to it.
Well, I mean, like, just think about it though. The being able to fly around and go where you want to go, but then, like, you know, here's like a flock of these creatures in the sky, and you're trying to get by. But that's hard because part of the thing that makes Panzer Dragoon so playable is the fact that you're on a pre-controlled path, so you can just focus on the aiming and the shooting. You're suddenly having to move in three dimensions and aim and shoot. There's going to have to be like some amazing.
Have you seen the Falconeer? You talked about that on the
Falconeer, yeah. The Falconeer looks great. Yeah. Have you seen that?
I don't know
this. You should look that up. It's a pretty slick looking take on this formula. They get more of a flat shaded look. Yeah, it's one guy doing it. I think he's based in the UK.
Oh, that looks cool.
Neither.
So is this an open world?
Netherlands. It's like an open map. I think it's more. I guess it's more like I guess my first guess would be something like a Rogue Squadron kind of thing, where it's like you have a large area, you can move around freely, but it's probably still objectives driven.
It's not on rails. Oh, I see. I'm looking at a video of it. Oh, that looks really good. One guy is doing this?
Yeah, one guy is doing that.
These
it looks cool, doesn't it?
Development is just insane. This guy's got some chops. He must have put in some time.
That style right there, actually, I think is a good look for this, because it's both modern and like has a retro charm, but it feels very stylized in a cool way. I like it a lot.
Planned release date November 10th. That's exciting.
Yeah,
thanks for putting this on my radar.
I think it's going to be a launch title for the new systems.
Yeah, there is this game, and there is another game that I think should have Panzer Dragoon fans enthusiastic. It's Sable. In terms of art style, art direction, it's more like Moebius style in terms of art direction. So,
yeah, I'm looking forward to that too.
If we go back to that topic, Panzer Dragoon Saga remake.
I mean, I feel like we've heard rumors of this being worked on, like attempts to like port it, do like almost like.
Did you see these? Did you see these artworks from? It's from 4chan, but did you see them? The models, Panzer Dragoon Saga models.
Yeah, I think you tweeted those out one time, and you even asked me, "Does this look legit?" And I was like, "I don't know, man. Like, it looks like fan stuff to me."
Okay, yeah. Well, honestly, that's what I would like to see confirmed next. I mean, Panzer Dragoon Saga to me was the game that it introduced me to the RPG genre. It made me realize why I like these games. I played a few games before that, but it was really the first game that made me realize why I enjoyed stories and music and very well written stories. So,
you want to hear a funny kind of anecdote about that? Is that in Panzer Dragoon Spy, in the Japanese version, they had like a little fold-in card. It basically was like write your feedback and stuff and send it in. Yeah. So I did. I sent it to Sega, and this was Sega of Japan, of course, but like I sent it in, and it basically said like, it would be really cool in the future if you could actually get off your dragon and walk around and explore and get a little bit closer to the world that you're in, because we never get to do that. You're constantly on the back of the dragon. And especially with Spy, you were running through villages, and like, especially in the opening stages when you're on the ground, you're running past like human civilization. And I was like, it would be really cool if you could explore that. And then, maybe 6 months later or something is when I saw the first announcements of Panzer Dragoon Saga. And I personally felt like I had made that happen because I was like, yes, they took my feedback.
Thank you.
Fuck yeah.
You're my hero.
You're welcome. But then, of course, later I found out that those were games that had already been planned and were developed in tandem. But I felt like a boss for a moment.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's so much potential. I mean, what I enjoy so much and what I think would still work in 2020 is, you have so many RPG with leveling up elements. And in Panzer Dragoon Saga, it feels really cool to have your dragon morphing. I think it's 5 levels. I'm not sure. I think it really feels cool and epic and badass, and your dragon has a new transformation. It would really work, I think, even in 2020. So the story is cool.
I know.
There's
a lot that could be done with this.
That dragon morphing system is what they brought over to Phantasy Star Online. Like when you're creating your character and you choose your model and then you choose what your size is and you can actually stretch it to be fat.
That's derived from that?
Yes, because it's the same.
No way.
It was oh gosh, now I'm blanking on his name. But the art director for Panzer Dragoon, who's now the producer of for Phantasy Star Online, he's the one who created that whole system.
That is amazing.
How talented he was to come up with a system where you could morph and push and pull, and that's why you can do that on the fly. So they took that system and made it your character creation in PSO.
That's so cool. Wow. I did not know that.
So Satoshi Sakai is the person I was thinking about. He's a producer on PSO2. He was the art director on Panzer Dragoon Saga. Now
he drew that picture for you.
No, that was Katsumi Yokota, who
sorry.
He was like the art director for Rez and stuff. Katsumi Yokota. Oh, actually, I have it right here. Katsumi Yokota was the one who did all the illustrations for the cover art.
What he could do an amazing Hazel in Panzer Dragoon remake. Honestly, it's incredible.
Yeah. Katsumi Yokota was the one who did all the illustration and artwork for Panzer Dragoon Saga, but Azel was actually designed by Satoshi Sakai, who was the guy who created the dragon in PSO, who created the morphing dragon in Panzer Dragoon. That's why they brought him onto Phantasy Star Online, because they were like, Sonic Team was like, well, you did all those baller dragons for Panzer Dragoon, so why don't you come over here and bring that dragon stuff to PSO? And he was the one who did the whole cinematic with the first reveal of like the dragon in PSO and stuff.
Yeah,
he was the original character designer for Edge and Azel, but Yokota-san was brought in to illustrate these characters, and so that was surprising for me, because I just thought Yokota-san was the one who had designed all of these things, and I was lucky enough to work with him at Q Entertainment and see his skills firsthand. But yeah, this is just amazing. I got him to draw this, like to film him doing a time-lapse illustration of Azel for a Polygon feature that I wrote about Panzer Dragoon Saga. And then I asked him, I was like, because he sketches all the time. I follow his Instagram. He's always doing a sketch like this every day. I said, are you attached to that drawing for any reason? Are you willing to let, do a little swap for this? And he said, just come see me in Japan. I'll give it to you. He gave it to me in a frame and everything. I've changed the frame, but he gave me the original drawing.
Oh my God. That's so incredible.
I'm not going to lie. This is fucking phenomenal. Yeah. This is his original drawing. This is the first time he's drawn Azel in like 25 years. Oof. Or 23 years.
So that was not the last, maybe.
What's that?
Man.
Yeah, maybe not the last.
It would be cool if they got him back. That's such a key thing with Panzer Dragoon is the art. And Panzer Dragoon Spy admittedly had great design, but it didn't have the best key art. Like if you're looking at the original Japanese package, it's like, it kind of looks like a archaeology dig. The American version of the box art was terrible. I don't even think that was related to
that's not great
assets at all.
I think the marketing could have been better overall for this game, I think. don't you think?
Well, I mean, the Saturn
Yeah.
was in a bad spot when this game came out in the West. So,
Do you have an actual copy of the U.S. version of Saga?
yeah.
Okay. Do you remember how hard it was to get that? Like I
Yeah,
had pre-ordered
yeah.
mine, and I wasn't even guaranteed of getting my pre-ordered copy because they made so few.
That was the problem. You're right. Like just getting games like that at the time, like the Saturn, it was not easy. Like they weren't putting them out there. It was almost like a order kind of thing in a way, where you couldn't just walk into a store on release day and expect to see copies on the shelves. You actually had to kind of ask for it.
I used to
I
work.
didn't even have a copy.
You
Sorry.
don't?
I didn't even have a copy. A friend of mine lended me a copy, and it was only recently that I bought a copy. It's because
wow.
of this friend that I meet from time to time that I was introduced to Panzer Dragoon Saga.
That friend is your best friend ever.
Yeah.
I remember, like, I used to work right below SEGA of America in San Francisco, and we were on the 4th floor, they were on the 6th floor when I worked at GameSpot. And I remember, this was, of course, like in the earlier days of the internet, but I remember seeing online that, like, somebody at SEGA had mentioned that they found, like, a closet where they found a bunch of boxes in a closet that had, like, all these, like, pallets of unopened games and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And of course the internet, having no couth whatsoever, was just like, everybody's like, oh God, what do I need to do to come over there and save me one? And stuff. None of that was happening, but I remember hearing from SEGA that they had found like one box just full of Panzer Dragoon sagas. You know, another one had Knights, another one had Guardian Heroes, whatever. It was like a mix of Saturn and older games. But just hearing that there was a box of like Panzer Dragoon Saga sitting up there, it was so hard not to go up there and just start begging on my knees to give me another one.
Yeah, I know someone that actually has a box of them because they used to work for SEGA back then, and they did just take a crate of Panzer Dragoon Sagas with them, and they still have them today.
Are they slowly eking them out on eBay or something?
No, I wish. No, it's like, but no, they just kept them. So I don't know what the plans are for them, but man, I would love that. Love to.
All right, you guys keep talking because I'm going to grab a couple things just real quick, and I'm just because I know that Olivier is going to want to see this stuff in person because he's always retweeting my tweets. Hold on.
I'm sure, yeah. So I really hope they do something with Panzer Dragoon Saga. Honestly, whether SEGA do it or someone, I mean, some fans in the form of like the Sonic Mania project, maybe a team of amateurs, but talented amateurs do something. I mean, and SEGA gives the green light.
It does feel like a game we've heard enough about. Like, I'm sure SEGA realizes there is some demand for it. I think it'll still be niche. Like, I don't think.
Yeah, but still a bigger niche than rail shooters, in my opinion. You know what I mean? If you take a look at a game like Nier Automata, it's a niche game, but it still managed to have a success.
I think it could. I think it could get an audience for sure. I think there's enough. It's
there's
enough of a
legend
legend
of
at that
RPG enthusiasts who would enjoy, playing it for the first time. I think
for sure. All right, so what have we got here?
So this is like, I'm going to take this out of the case because you won't get the reflection. This is the original U.S. version of Panzer Dragoon Saga, and I've got I don't. The only ones I don't have are the European ones, which I actually like the design of a lot better. But this is the thing signed by.
Oh my God!
A large portion of the original Panzer Dragoon Team Andromeda, including Takashi Iwade, who passed away last year. Yeah, that was tragic, and he's so young. He's like my age. But yeah, to have this was like a real like dream.
That's incredible. Truly,
I'm not sure I have a manual with my copy. I'm not even sure. So.
Well, the best thing that I originally ever had was like I had the Japanese Azel Panzer Dragoon RPG, and I met Kawagoe-san, the leader of Smilebit, and when I was interviewing him, I brought my copy of the game, and I wanted to see if any of the people present from the Orta team were formerly Team Andromeda. They were not, but he brought my copy of the game back to Japan, had sent the game around to every remaining Team Andromeda member that was there. And then eventually, it took like 3 months, but it eventually came back to me, and it was the most beautiful thing. I don't want to waste your time by going and getting it again, but they signed it all in the radial pattern with just white paint pen, and it was just the most gorgeous thing to me. And it was just such a, and that thing is like now about 20 years old itself, because I gave it to him in like 2001. But the other thing I wanted to break out so that Olivia can see it in quote unquote person is this thing.
Oh my God.
And you can see like there's 4 pictures of Orta on here. There's one there.
Yeah.
There's one here. There's a super deformed one here. And where is the other one? Oh, the other one is in this little pocket right there.
Down there.
Yeah.
Wow.
This was, I unscrewed the cover, and I brought it to that party, that reunion party at the Smile Bit, kind of where I saw the Xbox One remaster of it. I brought this
item is already unique, but you made it even more unique.
That's
there was, so that's another funny story. There's only 999 of these made, and Microsoft Japan, even though they're, that's why they made so few of them, but they made a special version for the launch of Panzer Dragoon Orta of this Xbox. This Xbox in itself is impossible to get without paying exorbitant fees, and you barely ever see it on eBay. But I carried this weird, awkward Xbox cover, all the way to Japan in a bag, and I was so paranoid about banging into something with it, but I managed to get it to the party, and the whole team there was like, look at this guy who brought a Panzer Dragoon Xbox case to this party. And they passed it around with all these markers, and everybody took a turn signing it. They were so into it. And now I've got this thing. It's just like, and what sort of sucks is I was in the process of trying to de-yellow this thing. Because you know how like some of these
it yellowed. Oh dang.
Yeah. So I wasn't able to like re-whiten it at before I did it, but whatever, it doesn't matter. Like there's literally nothing else in the world like this. So this was like extreme fandom at work for me to drag this thing all the way to Japan and back.
Truly incredible.
There was one thing I wanted to ask you. When you went to this party in Japan, how did the original Orta team react when seeing Panzer Dragoon Orta being rendered in 4K? How did they react? How did they feel?
The word is natsukashi, where they were experiencing extreme nostalgia. They're like, wow, because some of these guys haven't seen that game since they worked on it. So they were all like, it was a theater style. It reminded me a lot. John, I don't know if you're ever based in San Francisco, but Dolby Studios, Dolby Labs has a theater there. It reminded me a lot of that small person. It's like you can imagine George Lucas having a small personal theater in his house. And this is what it was like. It was like, maybe 15 rows of cascading sort of bleacher type arrangements and a big screen. It was like, I don't know, maybe like a 30-foot screen or something like that. It wasn't like a movie theater, but it was still
it's
a formidable viewing experience.
Yeah, exactly.
So for them to see the game in ways that they have never seen it, remastered into 4K, full 16:9, just beautiful, widescreen 4K action. I have to imagine they were all impressed, because they're all like, wow, and they're like talking about things.
Never seen it like this.
They remember how hard it was to implement this boss or whatever, or like how tricky this was. Remember getting this pattern. It was as fresh for them as it was for me. And I learned something interesting, because Mukayama-san, who was like the lead designer, who was in that meeting where I met Kawagoe when I was talking to them about Orta. He actually did work on the previous Panzer Dragoons, but he had like some prizes to give away to, I forget what the criteria was, but he had like 3 different prizes to give away to random team members. And one of them was the original Xbox version of Orta the Japanese version, of course. But it's the rarest one, but it's also the most generic one. So if you look at the Panzer Dragoon or the box art, the one that you usually see is the first launch edition, because that one came packed with like a Panzer Dragoon sound sampler and stuff, and it comes in like kind of a sepia tone colored case. That's the one that most everybody has, because they didn't really have that much demand to go beyond the first printing.
Right.
So the sort of like greatest hits platinum edition that came out afterwards with the regular silvery gray artwork is actually the really rare one. And I had never seen that before. And I thought I was like, I knew everything about Panzer Dragoon, but that one was like, I had never seen it before. And when he was holding it up and saying like, all right, you won this or whatever, I was like, what is that version and where is it? And then he explained it to me. So if you ever see that one, it's very, very rare.
That's interesting.
Very interesting. Very interesting story.
Man.
So yeah.
I want to load these games up again now. I'm getting all into it.
Yeah, seriously. You have to look it up.
It's incredible, because Panzer Dragoon Saga is one of my favorite games of all times, and it's difficult for me to replay it today. It's probably the toughest aspect. I think that in 2020, I can't really connect my Saturn to my new TV anymore. I need to buy some accessories because it doesn't have the VGA connectors anymore.
I play mine through a FrameMeister.
Yeah.
I mean, there are ways. They're not cheap.
But I'm also afraid that my Saturn would fail or my copy would fail. I would like a convenient way to, maybe it's only the original game, that's fine, but a remake would be nice as well.
If you want the most convenient way to play retro games for a pretty cheap price, check out the Retro Tank from Mike Chi. He sells them over in the US, but those things are simple little plug and play devices that do an amazing job line doubling the image. And yeah, it's cheap, simple, really, really good choice.
Can you say again?
It's the Retro Tank.
Okay, thank you.
So, John, you probably know about this, but there's a thing, I forget what it's called, like GDU, GMU. There are two devices. They're made mostly by the same guy, although they're 3D printed knockoffs on eBay all the time. There are things that you can basically, this is more important, this was basically designed for Dreamcast, but they eventually made a Saturn one too, where you can remove the optical drive from both of your systems.
It's the OD.
Put it,
optical drive emulators. So there's like the Fenrir, there's the Mode, which just came out recently. There's a bunch of different options out there, but yeah, you can just replace your optical drive with one of these devices, and you basically read from either an SD card or an SSD or anything like that, and just play ISOs, which is good for long-term preservation due to optical failure.
So my advice, and I'll find the information because I have it and I plan on doing it myself, but basically you replace your optical drive, Olivier, like you replace your optical drive with this, you put like, 128 gig card in it, and you can basically put every Saturn ROM onto one thing. You can have your entire library archived on this, and you never have to spin a disc ever again. Because I worry about this stuff too, because I'm like, well, shit, like, as nice as it is to have the original, these discs, like the next time I put it in, these discs may have oxidized and I'll never be able to actually play that disc. So, you grab a ROM off one of the ROM hosting sites, you put it on the card, and you can just play it. There's no loading times. It's beautiful. And if you run it through, like, I forget if these things actually have like mods for like HDMI out or RGB stuff, but you could at least hook it up to a FrameMeister or some all-in-one device that lets you output to a modern HDMI TV. But there are ways where you can just kind of bypass the whole disc thing.
Or you just go for like the full, like the old CRT there.
Yeah,
So, but it takes space.
Man, I remember the day I got rid of my like Sony Vega, 32-inch Sony Vega. It was so beautiful for playing retro games on, but man, that thing had to be like 6 feet long from front to back. It was insane.
Oh, they're so heavy. It's absurd.
I remember the lady who came by and bought it when I moved to Japan, and I was moving out of San Francisco. I had to carry it to her car, and my back still hurts from that day.
Yeah, exactly. Moving these things by yourself.
Yeah.
But they look so good.
But yeah, I'll send you that information because I feel like it would benefit all of us to be able to fire those things up and just be able to play without worrying about your discs turning into trash.
Yeah, disc rot is a concern.
I guess
haven't had it yet, but
sorry.
So I haven't encountered it myself yet. I think it does tend to be, as long as you temperature control your discs in general, it does seem to be less of an issue. But I feel like in the long run, there is always that worry of them just failing. And that's a constant.
I haven't had any games do that, but I have had a couple DVDs suddenly just not play. And I didn't even realize that disc rot was a thing until I started looking up, like, why isn't my DVD playing? And
it's usually down to it's often like the manufacturing process, especially like sometimes back in the day, certain production runs, like the glue maybe wasn't as stable or there was an issue with the run. And sometimes you just have bad luck, and a certain press of those discs will all exhibit this problem over time. And that combines with, different temperature issues, and you bring it all together, and there's always that risk of it happening.
Yeah. So
I just say that I wish we had a plug and play solution with HDMI
for Saturn,
similar to our Genesis Mini, something like that we can just plug and play, and everybody, even the young players, can experience this game. Because
actually,
it's fine, we have solutions, but now it becomes more and more complicated for us to find, and it becomes less and less accessible. You know what I mean? So that's my problem with that.
I mean, if you only want to play Saturn, actually, maybe something like there's these retro gaming cable sells the Rad2X cables, which is just literally it plugs right into your Saturn, and it's an HDMI output on the other end, and it's actually like good quality. There's a lot of generic ones from like Pound that are not so great, but the retro gaming cables Rad2X is great. So, but you're right. It'd be nice to have these games. The Saturn is such a rich machine, full of so many great titles. A lot of them are Japan only, but I think people don't really realize just how vast the library truly is, and there's no real easy way to discover it. Because even if you get like an optical drive emulator in there, you still have to use a regular Saturn. I mean, I guess there is the one option that I'm actually testing for review now is the Polymega, which does play Saturn games really well. And that's an HDMI device. It does a really great job with it. Yeah. I think all but 11 games run perfectly.
How much is that?
I think the ones that don't work are all those that use the MPEG card. Anything that uses the MPEG decoder card that was optional. I don't think they work, but everything else seems to be fine. So
it's expensive though. It's like $500 or.
I don't know the cost off the top of my head, but it's not cheap. It's true.
Have you heard of the Terra Onion? The Terra Onion is supposed to. That's
Terra Onion. That's the mode, I think, as they call it. They do good stuff for sure.
Yeah, fortunately there's like a dedicated fan base that comes up with solutions like this to be able to play your old games.
Oh yeah, yeah.
The Dreamcast in particular, like those the drives, the optical drives are not reliable. They're not meant for the long haul.
Nothing is worse than the PlayStation though. Those PlayStation optical drives are just a nightmare.
That's true, but the difference is that like at least you can play PlayStation 1 games on other things.
PS2, PS3, and there's lots of ways to play PlayStation games. There's
PSP.
Ways. Yeah, exactly. So whereas with Dreamcast and Saturn, you're kind of stuck. So it's trouble.
Yeah, but yeah, I would if it comes to like Panzer Dragoon Saga, yeah, I don't know. Like that's a hard ask. But I mean, it's not the biggest game in the world. It's only like, you can finish it in 10. Like, well, I mean, you can finish it faster than that, but it's not the longest game. It's like for an RPG, it's
pretty short,
10 hours or something like that.
It didn't feel short when I was young, to be honest. But
that's probably all those random battles. Probably made it feel long. But what's really cool about Panzer Dragoon Saga is how Spartan it is. Like there's so few characters. It's not like
it's very simple.
Where you run around and talk to 50 million people. There's like a couple of people in the campfire. There's a couple of people in this town. But most of the time you're just flying around on your dragon. Yeah.
See, one of the craziest things that still I still think about is my boss back in the day in the UK did the SEGA Saturn magazine. He was the editor-in-chief there. And they negotiated 1 month to when Panzer Dragoon Saga came out, they had disc 1 included with the magazine as a bonus disc. Wow. So like you buy the magazine, you get disc 1. It's not a super long disc, mind you, but it was this idea of like they give away disc 1 and then you use your save directly from that. If you buy the game, you just continue playing from there. And I thought that was a pretty amazing bonus to include with the magazine.
I read that magazine when I was young in France. I think it was the same magazine.
Yeah, I think they had some of the stuff translated into French. That's right, but it was run out of the UK. So. And
I had this disc. I think. Yeah.
It's cool. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, it was a great idea. Yeah, saying thank you for me.
That's a pretty significant pack-in bonus to come with a magazine. Shit.
Yeah. For sure.
Right up there with Christmas Nights.
Oh yeah, exactly. That was another good one. I just played that again last year.
In my interview with Miyoshi-san, who's the director of Fantasy Star Online, I found out that he was entirely responsible for the creation of the Christmas Nights.
No way, really?
The disc, the entire thing. He did not work on the original Nights, but he was at Sonic Team. He worked on Burning Rangers and stuff, and he was sort of the producer on was it Sonic 3D Blast that Traveler's Tales did?
Oh yeah.
So he wrote up the entire design document because Yuji Naka said, like, write up the design document for what's going to go in the Christmas Nights. He comes up with this whole document. He hands it off to the team and says, this is what you should make. Go ahead. He goes to the UK for 2 months to finish up Sonic 3D Blast. Total crunch time, Japanese development style. Total crunch time. Goes there for 2 months. Comes back totally exhausted. He's like, okay, so what did you do on Christmas Nights? How far are you? And they're like, we haven't done anything. So he was like, shit. He's like, I just got back. He's like, I've got to do this whole thing myself. He did the whole thing himself, like compiled all the music that went into that, got the Christmas Carol versions of the songs. Like he's the one who put Sonic the Hedgehog into the Knights world as a character. Like all those, like, all the re-skinning of everything to be like Santa Claus outfits and Christmas snow particles, everything. He did that all by himself. And then they gave that away to like new Saturn buyers and existing Saturn fans if you sent in a proof of purchase or something like that.
Man, I love it.
You could do that when you actually had discs, right, and magazines at the same time.
Yeah, I know. I miss those days. I really do. It was a good time.
Now you get a free download. Now you get a free download or a demo version. It's not the same.
It's really
somebody should do that, something like that. Demo version, which is cool and different enough from the actual retail product that you would actually want to keep that demo.
Yeah, that was a crazy time for that. Yeah, exactly. I mean, even Valve did that with Half-Life when they made Half-Life Uplink, which was a unique demo just that had nothing to do with the final game. It was a completely unique thing, and it was just the demo. That was happening a lot back then, but we don't see that now. And I can understand why. That's a lot of work, but still.
But still, like somebody like Valve would have the wherewithal to do something like that today.
Yeah, exactly. They could do
it because they want to.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
Anyway, like Panzer Dragoon Fly, get it right.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Exactly. One thing I wanted to ask you guys, what are you playing currently? What games are you playing currently? And what was the last game that you enjoyed very much, recently, like your GOTY for this year?
You can go ahead, John.
All right. I mean, right now I'm doing another playthrough. I haven't played in years. Doremi Fantasy on Super Famicom, because I really finally got the box version. I've had a cart for a while, but I got a box version this year. Just playing through that. I love that game. It's seriously great. It's one of the best platformers on there. So that I'm playing that on the retro side, and then I've still been playing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2.
I'm dying to get that.
It's super good. They nailed it. I did a whole retrospective on it last week. I love what they did. So it's super good. Yeah,
shit.
It's an
I've been trying to
game.
Hold out till now's the time where I start recommending to everybody, just wait till Black Friday because everything's going to drop.
Yeah.
My backlog says you don't need to buy anything new right now, right? But but you say that and I'm makes me.
So what?
It'll be worth it.
What is your GOTY, John, for this year so far?
GOTY Game of the Year. Oh gee, I can't announce that yet, dude. I gotta put that in my video.
But
I don't know. I actually don't know. I haven't decided on what would be a game of the year yet. There's too much stuff that's come out so far, and there's still a lot of stuff still to come. So we'll find out.
So what game would you mention as a game you've enjoyed very much recently that is worth mentioning here now?
Oh, I mean, just beyond Tony Hawk.
Yeah.
I mean, Streets of Rage 4. I mentioned earlier that came out this year. Absolutely floored me. It's a true return to form. Those guys understood what Streets of Rage is all about, and they did an amazing job on that. I love it.
I need to play it as well. Yeah.
No, it's very good. It's very good for sure. I agree with that.
So what about you?
My backlog is so painful. It's so pathetic. I have friends who give me a hard time because I've only played maybe 5 minutes of the Final Fantasy VII Remake, something we've been wanting for years, and I have just not put the time in, mostly because I've been playing so much Neo 2. When Neo 1 first came out, it was different. I was in total Souls mode, and I was playing everything Souls related. So when Neo, the original Neo came out, it was cool, but it was different, and I didn't like some of the design decisions. But when Neo 2 came out, there was a void in Souls releases, and I wasn't feeling Sekiro. So I was all in on Neo, and usually when I latch onto a game, especially a console game that gets me to sit down in front of a TV, I'll put hundreds of hours into that. So I put so much time into Neo 2. So that's been one of the things I've been playing a lot of. But what I've been playing a lot recently, which is weird, and I've been playing it a lot on PC and PS4, is Death Stranding. I
love that game.
I was loving it so much that I put it down because I didn't want to burn out and I didn't want to blast through it too fast. But then I got sidetracked with a bunch of Switch stuff because it's easy for me to play because I can go anywhere with that. And I've been playing a lot of things with my kids, like Minecraft Dungeons and stuff. But recently I've been going back to Death Stranding, and it's been just as good. And I got the PC version, so I've been playing on that too, because now I know what I'm doing. But then I started playing Microsoft Flight Simulator because I was crazy for just the serenity in this terrible year of flying with my headset on and just hearing the wind of, just being able to fly anywhere I want. Has been some weird fantasy that tapped into something I didn't know existed inside me. So that's been fun too. But I don't know what I would call my game of the year yet. I would, based on playtime, I would say it might be Neo 2, but I know that's not the trend. That wouldn't be the trendy thing on anybody's list. So I don't know. I have to pick a more.
Hey, nothing wrong with that, dude.
I need to pick something a little bit more pretentious than that, maybe.
Okay. Yeah. My backlog is quite big, but I was late on 2 games. So I'm playing currently Final Fantasy VII Remake, and in parallel, I'm also playing Last of Us Part 2. It's funny because I'm not into zombie games, and I never understood the hype about Last of Us, and I finally beat Last of Us 1 this year. I enjoyed it. I played what's the other game? Days Gone. I enjoyed it. Honestly, with the patches, it's good. I enjoyed it. To my surprise, because I was not into zombie stuff. And now I started Last of Us Part 2 as well. No spoiler, but I was a bit shocked about this. You know what I mean?
I haven't finished it, so definitely keep those spoilers to yourself. But I loved the first one, and I thought it was great. But maybe I'm just usually like anti-hype, but like I tend to cool off on things that I know that everybody's like just jawing about all the time, and I was like, I didn't want to feel pressured into it. But the thing is, by the time I'm done with work and by the time I've got time to relax and stuff, usually it's like 10 o'clock at night after I put the kids to bed. The last thing I want to do is sit down with a really, really, really intense game and like plow through that thing.
Yeah.
So The Last of Us came at me at a time where I wasn't really, whether I was like political anxiety or whatever, like
exactly.
The Last of Us 2 is not what I need right now. So I'm only maybe about an hour into that game. Most of the things I play are like escapist. I mean, Death Stranding is borderline too intense for me, but I still play it. But
it's
most
so
of the
otherworldly that it kind of works. Yeah.
Yeah, because it doesn't feel like. I mean, The Last of Us 2 feels like it could be 15 years from now.
Yeah, exactly.
Death Stranding doesn't.
No.
Yeah. And I will just finish on my GOTY so far. For me, it's Ghost of Tsushima. I love this game. I love the atmosphere. I love the art direction, the particle effect, the beautiful landscapes. It's just incredible. And to me, open worlds often struggle to, offer a consistent and cohesive experience. But this game is just incredible.
Yeah, this is another one I'm sitting on too.
Oh yeah,
it's incredible. I love it.
It's so shameful. I've got it sitting here, and I'm only still like kind of in the tutorial area as well. It's like, I don't know. There's just not enough time in the day, I think.
Yeah.
No. And you know how it is. I mean, you used to cover games as well, and that's what I'm doing. So you're always like being like shoveled new games at you. Like you have to cover this, and it's like you never get time to like relax and play.
People think like being a game editor is like, oh, you just sit around and play games all day. I can tell you in like my entire career, I played games maybe 5% of any given day because I was too busy writing stuff. I was
so
too
much.
busy.
Yeah, exactly. There's so much work to be done.
Something that I picked up recently, which surprised me because a friend of mine told me that he uses it to actually previs and storyboard movies with, which was amazing to me. I knew about its power and versatility, but like I'd never imagined it would be used in that way. Is the PlayStation game Dreams?
Oh, geez, I never thought about that.
Because you can set up all these cinematics, you can like create the style. I guess I haven't used it in this way myself, but you can create cinematics. You can use like affect the art style. You can position the camera. He says it's by far the easiest, most flexible tool for setting up pre-visualization stuff for movies that he's working on and to storyboard them in a very, very professional looking, easy to use.
That's incredible.
Way.
I love that.
And I picked it up, and like all Media Molecule things, the single player experience is beautifully curated and looks gorgeous. And I was just blown away. I mean, I love Tearaway. I love Little Big Planet. I'm not into the tool building stuff or the game building stuff, even though I've seen the amazing things that people do with it, because it just feels like more work to me.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, I feel like if I'm putting time into that, I should be like learning more Unreal or something instead of like learning a tool within a game. You know what I mean? It's
exactly. That's the same. That's it for me. But having experienced it, Dreams to me has just like shown me things I've never seen in a game before.
It's insane
gorgeous.
what they achieved.
Yeah, it's just gorgeous. I can't believe that is like a game-making game. And, it's like RPG Maker, except it looks cool.
Exactly.
So that's something you should check out for sure.
Okay. I will add it to my list of games I'm late on.
Yeah. I'm looking at my stack over there. It's like this big. Like, there's just no way. There's no way.
So it's been really nice having you guys on the podcast. I know it's not easy to schedule days with everyday life stuff. So thank you again for joining for this discussion.
Yeah,
Sure.
thanks for your patience too. I know that like I've been lackadaisical about getting back on this, but it was fun for sure to talk with you guys.
Definitely.
So take care. I will follow your videos, John, and your Twitter, James, about your next project. It will be interesting, I'm sure.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Yeah, and thanks for all the Digital Foundry articles, John. I read those religiously to see
cool.
what like nerdy little details that like people like me would care about. But I know it's in there, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna get that because of that fill rate. Fuck yeah! And so I get really excited. That those things mean a lot to me.
Cool. I'm glad
I
to
always
hear
learn
that.
something different. I always learn something new with your videos, John. So it's interesting. All the Digital Foundry stuff. It's always fascinating.
Yeah, great work always.
All right, thanks.
All right, guys.
Okay.
Well, have a great day. I'm looking forward to seeing this podcast, even though I hate the sound of my own voice.
Yeah, it was nice having you. Thank you, guys, and have a nice day.
Yeah,
thanks,
you too.
guys. See you guys later. See you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.